Number 15. The taste of triumph, literally. Picture this. You're huddled around a flickering fire, wind howling, with a woolly mammoth carcass beside you. You've just taken down the beast that could have stomped you into dust. Your leader, a grizzled cave person, tears into the raw liver. No cooking involved. Raw. Now gross, right? Well, for our ancestors, that wasn't just dinner. It was a power move, a quick energy boost, and possibly even a weird form of medicine. Early humans ate raw organ meats because they were packed with nutrients necessary for survival, especially when food was scarce. While we're busy cooking everything to a crisp, the raw stuff was the fast food of the Paleolithic. Your brain, wired for efficiency, craved dense calories. It wasn't about gourmet dining. It was about survival before some other predator decided you were dinner. So while your modern palate is screaming, your ancestor's stomach was probably doing a happy dance. Basically, your great-great-great-grandpappy thought a raw liver smoothie was the ultimate power snack. Number 14. Sleeping with one eye open. Literally. Imagine you're lying in bed, cozy, with a weighted blanket and white noise. Now picture your ancestor trying to catch some Z's on the cold cave floor, knowing a saber-toothed tiger might decide to make them dinner. Do you think they got a full 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep? Not a chance. Early humans practiced polyphasic sleep, which meant they napped in shorter bursts, constantly waking to scan for threats. It's like their internal alarm clock was set to existential dread. Sleeping soundly often meant not waking up at all. Even when resting, their brains were running constant threat assessments. So while you may complain about waking up in the middle of the night, your ancient brain is probably just giving you an ancestral reminder that you're not actually safe from lurking dangers. Basically, your deepest sleep cycles are still haunted by the ghost of a hungry prehistoric predator. Number 13. The human GPS, pre-Google Maps edition. Imagine being dropped in the middle of nowhere with no phone, no compass, no recognizable landmarks. Terrifying, right? Well, for our ancestors, this was Tuesday. They had an almost supernatural sense of navigation. It wasn't just about remembering trees. It was about reading terrain, winds, stars, and even the smell of water. Your brain was an incredibly tuned biological GPS, constantly mapping and updating its mental landscape. Getting lost wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. So next time you're fumbling with your phone trying to find the nearest coffee shop, remember that your ancient brain once navigated vast landscapes with nothing but sticks, stones, and a healthy fear of starvation. Basically, your ancestors had better internal maps than Apple or Google ever will. Number 12. The social thermostat. Literally. You walk into a cold room, and your first instinct is to shiver and maybe turn up the heat. Now imagine a group of early humans huddled in a freezing cave with no central heating. What was their secret weapon against hypothermia? Each other. Social thermoregulation was literally a matter of life and death in icy climates. They huddled together to share body heat and comfort. Your brain, sensing the cold, triggers the urge to seek human proximity, not just for warmth, but for psychological comfort. It's why a hug or cuddling under a blanket still gives that primal feeling of safety. This isn't just sentimentality, it's a survival instinct. Next time you feel the chill, remember that spooning wasn't just for romance, it was to not freeze to death. Your need for human connection is rooted in avoiding hypothermia. Number 11. The grossest medicine cabinet. You wake up with a gnarly wound. No antiseptic wipes, no band-aids. What do? For early humans, they might have reached for cow dung or spider webs. Their medicine cabinet was the wild, animal feces, molds, and plants. Some might have had beneficial properties, hello, penicillin-producing molds, but many were pure placebo or worse, actively harmful. But when the alternative was an infection or bleeding out, desperate measures were taken. Your brain, relentlessly wired for survival, didn't care if it was gross. It cared if it worked. So next time you complain about the taste of cough syrup, be grateful you're not slathering fresh dung on your wounds. Basically, your great-great-grand healer believed that the nastier it smelled, the better it worked. Number 10. The prehistoric dentist's chair toothache? Excruciating, right? Now imagine the pain of a bad tooth with no dentist and no painkillers. Early humans faced constant painful dental issues. A bad tooth could mean starvation if you couldn't chew, or worse, a fatal infection. So what did they do? They performed crude dental surgery by using sharpened stones or bone tools to extract or even drill into infected teeth. It was a horror movie come to life. This wasn't a simple cleaning. It was an act of sheer desperation to avoid long-term suffering. Your brain, usually good at avoiding pain, would override that instinct because the infection was worse than the pain of a DIY extraction. Basically, your modern dentist would have a conniption fit looking at your ancestors' dental records. Number 9, the original body modifications. You might think piercings and tattoos are a modern trend, a way to express individuality. And sure, they are now. But for our ancestors, body modification often had a far more practical and sometimes horrifying purpose. Scarification for tribal identity, stretching earlobes to carry heavy ornaments, or cranial deformation to signal status or belonging weren't just aesthetic choices. They were rites of passage, markers of bravery, and signs of group affiliation that could literally mean the difference between life and death. The pain endured during these processes wasn't just pain. It was a demonstration of resilience, a way to prove your worth to the group. Your brain, wired for social cohesion, understood that the short-term agony of a piercing was a small price to pay for the safety and acceptance of your tribe. So, while you might get a tattoo to look cool, your ancient relative was getting theirs to, not get eaten by a rival clan. Basically, your fashion choices are a watered-down echo of life-or-death tribal signaling. Number 8. Eating your enemies. Sometimes. You're at a barbecue, enjoying a perfectly grilled burger. Now picture your ancestors, after a particularly nasty skirmish with a rival group, deciding to not just defeat their enemies, but to consume parts of them. Yes, cannibalism has been a grim part of human history. While the idea might make our modern stomachs churn, for some ancient cultures, it wasn't about hunger. It could be about absorbing the enemy's strength, a ritualistic act of dominance, or even a desperate measure during times of extreme famine. Your brain, in its capacity for both profound connection and profound cruelty, could rationalize this act for perceived survival benefits, whether physical, spiritual, or psychological. This practice wasn't just about feeding the body, it was about exerting ultimate power, ensuring resources, or simply preventing a future threat. Basically, your ancestors' idea of a power lunch was considerably more direct. Number 7. The ostracism death sentence. You're having a bad day. Maybe you said something dumb in a group chat, or accidentally unfollowed your best friend. Annoying, right? Now, imagine that social faux pas meant you were literally cast out of your entire society, left to face the wilderness alone. For our ancestors, ostracism wasn't just awkward. It was a slow, terrifying death sentence. Being part of a group, a tribe, a clan was the only way to survive. You needed others for protection from predators, hunting large game, sharing resources, and raising children. The fear of exclusion, the primal fear of being alone, was life-threatening. Your brain, deeply wired for social connection and belonging, understood this implicitly. So, next time you feel a pang of anxiety about what someone thinks of your Instagram post, remember, your genes are just screaming about not being left to the wolves. Basically, your inner cave person thinks getting ghosted is equivalent to being mauled by a bear. Number 6. The portable food sack. Literally you. Imagine you're going on a long journey. No supermarkets, no Uber Eats. What do you pack? Maybe some dried fruit, jerky, a water bottle. Now, envision your ancestor going on a similar trek. If they ran out of food, their emergency rations were a part of themselves. Yes, auto-cannibalism in extreme survival scenarios involved consuming parts of their own body, like skin or even digits, to stave off starvation for just a little longer. This wasn't about choice. It was about survival, the absolute terror of imminent death. Your brain, confronted with the ultimate biological imperative to survive, would override every instinct against self-mutilation because the alternative was worse. This horrific decision showcases the desperate ingenuity and brutal resilience of humans pushed to the absolute brink. Basically, your survival toolkit used to include a built-in snack. Number 5. The weaponized poop. You're playing a video game and you throw a grenade. Boom. Effective, right? Now imagine your ancestor facing a rival tribe and their weapon of choice is dried animal dung. Sounds like a joke, right? But in some early warfare and hunting tactics, animal feces could be used as a primitive biological weapon. Think about it. Hurled into an enemy camp, it could spread disease, contaminate water sources, or simply create a disgusting morale-crushing mess. For hunting, a poisoned arrow often had its tip coated with putrefied animal matter, designed to cause a fatal infection even if the initial wound wasn't lethal. Basically, your tactical instincts used to include finding the freshest pile of dung. Number 4. The head-shrinking status symbol. You want to show off your wealth or status. Maybe you buy a fancy watch or a luxury car. Now imagine that in some ancient cultures, the ultimate status symbol was a shrunken head. Not just any head, mind you, but the shrunken head of a defeated enemy. This practice wasn't just morbid, it was a complex mix of ritual, power dynamics, and a deep belief in the spiritual essence of the individual. The process itself, carefully removing the skull, boiling the skin, filling it with hot sand to shrink, was meticulous and terrifying. Your brain, obsessed with hierarchy and signaling dominance, could conceive of and execute such a gruesome act because it served a powerful social function, instilling fear in enemies and pride in the tribe. Basically, your ancestors' idea of a flex was considerably more shrunken. Number 3. The baby whisperer with a twist. You hear a baby crying. What do? Comfort it? Feed it? Change it? Now imagine your ancestors. Babies cried then too, probably even more, given the constant dangers. But sometimes, when resources were critically scarce or the group was on the run from a predator, an infant's cries could attract unwanted attention, putting the entire group at risk. This is where things get truly disturbing. Some historical accounts and anthropological studies suggest that infanticide was a grim, desperate survival strategy. If a baby's cries threatened to expose the group to fatal danger, or if food was so scarce that keeping one more mouth alive meant everyone starved, a horrific decision might have been made. Basically, your ancestors understood the absolute darkest meaning of silent night. Number 2. The bone-deep hunger. You're feeling peckish. Maybe you grab a snack from the fridge. Now imagine you're absolutely starving. Not just a little hungry, but bone-achingly, mind-numbingly starving. For early humans, food wasn't a guarantee. It was a constant, desperate quest. When large game animals were killed, every single part of them was utilized, especially the bone marrow. Our ancestors would crack open bones, even the thickest ones, to get at the fatty, nutritious marrow inside. It was high-calorie, easily digestible fuel, especially crucial during lean times. Your brain, in a state of extreme caloric deficit, would drive you to extract every last bit of energy from your kills, even if it meant smashing bones for hours. Basically, your ancestors' favorite snack required a hammer and chisel. Number 1. The art of the gruesome funeral line. You attend a funeral. It's somber, respectful, maybe a bit sad. Now imagine your ancestors' funeral. Depending on the culture, it could be far more visceral and gruesome by modern standards. We're talking about excarnation, where the body is deliberately stripped of flesh, sometimes by leaving it exposed to scavengers or through active removal before the bones are buried. Or practices like endocannibalism, where relatives consume parts of the deceased as a ritual of mourning and connection. These weren't disrespectful acts. They were meaningful ways to honor the dead, recycle nutrients, and maintain a spiritual link. Your brain, struggling to make sense of death, developed these rituals to cope with loss and connect the physical and spiritual realms. Basically, your ancestors' grieving process involved some highly unconventional post-mortem activities.